Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. I'm your host, Joe Kuzma. I should call this a special edition of the WTF podcast they usually do with Terry Fletcher, but I'll be flying solo this week at least. Terry will rejoin me here in the near future. We'll discuss. She still has her feature column coming out on SteelCityUnderground.com this week. The usual WTF stuff, but I have a couple additional things to talk about, and that's why this is special. That's why I'm here and doing this one-off by myself for a change. Actually, it's back-to-back where I don't have a guest. I'm usually, Brian or Nate or Terry or somebody's always hanging out with me here, and I truly appreciate it. I know some of us are still licking our wounds over the AFC Championship game from last Sunday, and then there's some I guess gasoline poured on this fire, and we're going to talk about that here in a second, but my own personal WTF, which you will not read or hear from Terry otherwise, is we have an Instagram account, folks, and whether or not you know that and follow us, if you do, thank you. If you don't, check it out. It's the usual, I think it's just Instagram.com/Steel City Underground, and if you happen to follow Steeler Gang on there too, they're always posting a lot of our stuff and reposting. Thank you guys, especially Banger over there, one of the main hombres in the Steeler Gang. The guys crack me up. They've taken over Boston last Sunday, and you know what? These guys, win or lose, they know how to have a good time, so a quick shout out to them. But just on the Instagram path, there was Sunday. This would be before the game. That starts at 6:40. Well, TV time 6:40. I don't know that it kicked off at 6:40. We had this photo that we put out of all the teams that have, they have quite a few Lombardi trophies. And we posted this, and I should actually figure it out. I'm pulling it up here. You'll know why I even regret trying to look for this here. Now, this got a lot of play, 1,226 likes at this moment. It's still going. There's still people from 2 days ago. This was posted 2-3 days ago, Sunday, let's say noon or 1 o'clock or 11 in the morning or something like that. Whenever I decided to crawl out of bed, get a cup of coffee, have some toast, get the kid and the wife all relaxed and whatnot, and then focus my mind on football, that's when I put it up. And I was working on it throughout the better part of the week. Sometimes I have Megan, who helps me a lot with the Instagram account too, who I gave a shout out to in the last episode. And just if you haven't seen this, it's black and gold, go figure, because the Steelers have 6 trophies atop the list. And then there's the 49ers and Cowboys each with 5, and then the Giants, Packers, and Patriots each with 4. And there are so many, this is the WTF, there are so many morons out there that cannot figure out, they're out there, they're not even Yinzers, these are these Boston folks that are out there just throwing darts at us and just poking at us, and it's just, come on, guys. This was posted before the game. It was posted because we have 6 trophies. Even though we're not going to get the 7th one this year, we have 6 of them already. And you have 4. So telling us that we lost, and on all these different comments and Facebook things, but especially like on Instagram of like all things, it's like there's nothing wrong with this picture. It makes you a little sad that we don't add to it. It got us all hyped up for the game prior to. It was posted before. It wasn't like this like afterthought of, well, you know what, we got 6. Like the people trying to make fun of Steelers fans, they always say, well, they're watching the History Channel and blah, blah, blah. Well, there's a lot of history there. There's 6 times as much history as most teams have, and maybe 2 more than what the Patriots have. We'll see what they end up doing in the upcoming Super Bowl here, but they're still going to be 1 behind. So WTF, and WTF as well to all the Steelers fans who are just yelling at me, screaming at me, being angry with me for whatever various reasons that you have. I'm not the Steelers. I'm not a Steeler. I do not play for the team. Why are you yelling at me? You ask me my opinion on something, and then you yell at me after the fact. I'm going to give you my opinion on the game. my opinion is the Steelers were still in it through halftime. They didn't do anything with the ball as they started for the second half. They got called for a Ryan Shazier penalty, which was weak, and the Patriots get a first down. Then they fumble, and what was it, fourth one, I think, and they fumble the football on that. Brady with his little hurry up as we're used to, and the Steelers were ready for it, and they clearly recovered the ball. And that's a whole other WTF. I'm sure Terry's going to bring that one up, how a fumble cannot be a fumble, or it is not a fumble becomes a fumble and is not a fumble. And they don't change over possession. And then the Patriots score, and then, of course, Eli Rogers fumbles right after that. Patriots score again, and then there's a Roethlisberger pick somewhere in the middle of that, and this score just piles up. The Steelers' defense, why didn't they do this or that? Actually, not too terrible, even turning the ball over, only holding the Patriots to a field goal, holding them to a field goal on the first drive. They weren't going to prevent them from scoring altogether. People want me to say they were out-coached, overplayed. You know, you can only do so much with the field position. Look at against any team, especially, and then you're going to do it against Bill Belichick and his staff and Tom Brady. It's not going to work. That's why they won 14 games, okay? A lot of people just want me to say the Patriots are the better team. Look at the score. You can't figure that out for yourself. WTF, seriously. But I want to get off of that. I do, because I got a whole lot of... I'm going to do a film breakdown on how some of the calls are no calls, and I don't want it to sound like an officiating rant. There is some consistent inconsistency within upholding the rules within the NFL, but for what it's worth, they really did have some type of impact on the game, particularly that fumble, I believe. So... the Steelers make their own bed. When you don't score in the red zone, are you going to yell at me? You want to fire Mike Tomlin over that? Come on, guys. Ron Cook said it good. Brian Roach wrote an article based on Ron Cook. Ron Cook, of course, being from the Fan 93.7 in Pittsburgh radio. And we're going to talk about his show, or the Ben Roethlisberger show, which airs during the Cook and Pony's hour there, or 3 hours, or whatever they have in the morning drive there. Jeez, I don't even know where to start with that, to be completely honest. It's just derailed me. But Ron Cook said Steelers fans are spoiled. I have said this many times, even on this on this show. You could look in the archives as to why I say it. Most people would be ecstatic and happy. You don't hear people in Carolina calling for Ron Rivera's head because they didn't make the playoffs. No, they were just in the Super Bowl. Were they happy they didn't win the Super Bowl last year? No, but there's so many teams that don't make it that far. So WTF, everyone. Quit screaming and yelling at people. Be happy. I get it. The Pens ended up winning. That was tough. They had to grind that one out too. And there was a lot of time. People think too, like, oh, well, they fired, I can't remember what's his name, and got Mike Sullivan as a coach, and we're delving into hockey, which I didn't plan on doing for today's show, but WTF, you know? Like, I think I was just built better to accept this loss. I had my one of my teams in the in the college football playoff lost. Ohio State spanked, just totally blah. One of my other teams, alma mater, Youngstown State, made it all the way to the FCS National Championship game, and they didn't do so hot either. And that game was just freaking bizarre when you could throw more than one interception. It like basically bounces off of someone's foot and into the air, nearly on the ground, but hits their foot into the air and then gets caught. Although that officiating crew was actually pretty good in that game for the most part. But you get all kind of the Cleveland Indians, kind of my team a little bit. Pirates are too. I've told you guys about the Ohio thing. It's weird being here, living between Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Wife being a Browns fan and everything else. So another team, they dropped 3 games and lost the World Series. Maybe I'm just better equipped for it because I've gone through it before. I'm used to disappointment, and maybe fans aren't used to disappointment with the Steelers because they don't lose. And they don't lose because Mike Tomlin's a good coach. WTF. Whole other rant, though. Ben Roethlisberger. Cook and Pony. Right? So, this is what happens on Ben Roethlisberger's radio show. He goes out and makes some comments. Well, he's actually asked if he would return to play or what's going on for the 2017 season. And this is what he had to say.
Ben, how much do you feel like you have left?
I don't know. It's one of those things that I was talking to my wife about it last night, and I've talked to my agent about it and coach about it, that, I'm going to take this off season to evaluate, to consider all options, to consider health and family and things like that, and just kind of take some time away to evaluate next season, if there's going to be a next season, all those things. I think that's, at my point in my career and my age, I think that's the prudent and smart thing to do every year.
Well, I feel like then the logical follow-up is almost like what James Harrison got asked in the locker room on Sunday. You're going to play next year, right?
Like I said, I'm going to take some time and evaluate, with my family, and just really do a lot of praying about it and make sure it's the right thing for me and my family.
Ben, I'm a little flabbergasted here with this thought. I mean, you've always been one to say next year, next year, next year. I don't even know how to follow that up, Andrew.
I think, Ben, it sounds to me like you've got priorities in life, right? I mean, and I wonder, some of the concussion stuff and the head injury stuff, is that stuff even right now into this offseason you might be thinking about?
Well, injuries are always a key. Obviously we saw Heath Miller, and the head injuries are always a big thing. I think that I feel very blessed and thankful that my line was as good as they were this year to keep me as upright as they were, as I was able to be this year. And I'm not by any means saying I'm not coming back or anything like that. I'm just saying that at a point in my career, I think it's prudent, just like I'm sure James is doing and other guys that have been in this league a long time, to evaluate, to just make sure, because you want to be able to leave this game walking out of it in a healthy spot. You don't want to be, quote unquote, carted out. You don't want to be to leave this game and be worse for the wear. So that's why I think it's prudent to evaluate.
Okay, so I'm reading this as, some people are reading this as, if there's going to be a next season. I'm reading this as, I'm going to take this off season to evaluate, to consider all options. That's what I'm taking it as. Oh, so everyone already is jumping on the bandwagon as to whether Big Ben is retiring. He just signed a huge deal last season, heading into last season. This is the first year of his new deal. Well, kind of it's a contract extension, blah, blah, blah. But it was a 4-year, $87 million deal, a $31 million signing bonus. And he signed through the 2019 season. So that means he's still signed for 3 more seasons, 2017, 2018, 2019, and Ben would lose a lot of money right out the gate. We're going to talk about just the contract in and of itself. So, Ben Roethlisberger basically has $6.2 million per year signing bonus prorated over those last 3 years. He has $5 million roster bonuses. He has all of these different guarantees. If you're looking at all the money, just right out the gate, the signing bonuses, $18.6 million. More than likely the Steelers get that back, or you'd have to pay that back. Or they've forced him to pay that back. We've seen this in different situations. I'm not a salary cap expert. I got some of this information from my buddy Nick Signorelli, who's very outspoken. He's been on the show before. So, in other words, what Ben would lose, 18.6, he'd forfeit $10 million and lose another 12 in salary. So I think we're looking at, math-wise, as Nick was trying to explain to me, $45.6 million and another 24 in lost salary, walking away from nearly $70 million in that contract. Like I said, he signed a new deal, $87 million, just for 2015, and he did that a little bit in advance. Usually, the Steelers are doing that 2 years out when they're doing deals with quarterbacks. Ben's base salary this year was just under $18 million, with that 6.2 signing bonus that's prorated over the life of 5 years, basically, is what he has there. So I'm going to get out of these numbers. They're pretty boring to talk about. But if Ben walks away, number one, I don't see Ben walking away. I think Ben needs to recharge the batteries. I think just as I was talking about all the Yinzers going crazy over losing this game and just being spoiled, and everyone has to be outspoken and use their social media muscles, coin a term from Brian talking about spoiled fans. Check out Brian's article over at SCU. Think you'll enjoy it. Think you'll enjoy mine on this same topic too. Try not to rehash all of the same things, but Ben Roethlisberger, Brett Favre, SiriusXM NFL Radio said this about Big Ben. He said, what Big Ben is feeling is the last thing I want to think about is football. Takes the loss so personal. And I guarantee you he does, but it's also because some of these yahoos that are out there that if they're attacking me, I can't imagine how much they're attacking Ben. And trust me, most of us, we have conversations with some people within the organization, some other writers, reporters, social media managers, and whatnot within, or they have the privilege of covering the Steelers organization. They get all of the same venom that we get here, dealing with people that are complaining to us publicly in Twitter, private messages. People say some disgusting things. Me and Terry have mentioned this on the WTF podcast before even. You imagine how ugly it is after a 9-game win streak ends with the AFC Championship against a team that we hate. Yes, Steelers fans hate the Patriots and Tom Brady. Part of it is because of their success. Part of it is because they beat us. They're in our way of achieving all of these Super Bowls. Which, by the way, folks, why do you feel so entitled to a Lombardi trophy? The Steelers have 6 of them. You would think that 6 would be a low number. It's not. It's the most that any team has in NFL history. 6. No one else has 6. Only 2 other clubs, as I said, have 5. 3 other franchises have 4. The Patriots have an opportunity to move from 4 to 5. So why do you feel so entitled over that when that's over a span of, 40-some years? Since the 70s when the Steelers went on their first streak with Chuck Noll and Mean Joe Green and Terry Bradshaw and Lynn Swann and John Stallworth. It's not like any of those guys are still playing. You have the modern era of free agency. And the Steelers are still getting it done here and there. Cowher. We had a good conversation on Twitter about Bill Cowher and winning 2 AFC championships of the 6 that he was in, and then, of course, going on to the Super Bowl and going 1-for-1, which is what Mike Tomlin has done 1-for-1, and Mike Tomlin is 2-for-3 in the AFC title games. Cut some slack here. The Steelers make it far and play very well and don't have losing seasons. So when you're carrying these pitchforks and torches, I have a feeling a little bit of this is retaliation from Ben from getting these messages like, I wish you would die. You're old. All the people who want us to draft a quarterback and replace him and shove him out the door like the Packers did with Brett Favre. Do you want to see Big Ben playing for like Cleveland or some other like awful team, or maybe somebody that picks them like the Jets picked up Brett Favre for a year, and the Vikings, an interdivision rival? Can you imagine Ben going to like the Bengals or the Ravens? Do you want that? Don't shove this guy out the door, and don't make him feel appreciated, for Christ's sake. Sign of the cross. I swore, basically. For those of you who are God-fearing people, for everyone else, just you could giggle it off if you want. But I'm fired up. I really am. I don't think Ben would leave the Steelers on the hook with dead cap space and whatnot and with no replacement plan for a quarterback. I really don't believe that he would do that. I believe he does want some change within this organization. He's probably frustrated about how this all went about. You lose Lev Bell, the second best receiver, and obviously probably the best running threat or dual threat in the NFL. That doesn't help you defeat a team like the New England Patriots when you have to play without him for 3 quarters, and he has a total of 6 carries. 4 of those presumably uninjured, gets injured on the 5th one, tries to come back for a 6th carry. D'Angelo Williams, great player, not Le'Veon Bell. Just facts. Just facts. Love D'Angelo Williams. Think D'Angelo Williams is I don't even want to say a great backup. He would make a great starter for many teams. Did for many years in Carolina. But he's not Lev Bell. No. And we're going to talk about Antonio Brown here in a second, but he's basically the only guy to throw to. You saw Sammy Coach drop balls, Kobe Hamilton drop balls, and that's why I said that all of this is all mounting what everybody's complaining about, and I give you an answer, and they're outcoached or outplayed. Tomlin addressed this in his press conference too. I agree. There are situations where maybe you want to make different decisions. That's life. That's football. That's every game, not just one game. You don't execute. Things aren't going your way. Certain calls don't get called. That ball doesn't bounce your way for a fumble or nearly a pick early in the game. I think on the Patriots' first possession, just bounced right in front of Mike Mitchell's fingertips. Those are game-changing things that happen. That score looks bad. It was embarrassing to turn over the ball. You don't think these players feel this same way? They're unhappy. They have to live with this now until they get to training camp and they can get back on a football field and avenge this loss. It's a learning experience, as Ben said, with his young receivers maybe not ready for big games. A young team, mostly young team. Artie Burns, Sean Davis, Javon Hargrave, L.T. Walton, Bud Dupree, first and second year players. Shazier's still young. Ross Cockrell. Those are all the defensive guys. You got Jesse James, Eli Rogers, Kobe Hamilton, Sammy Coates. Offensive linemen. They're a little more battle-tested. So I won't necessarily throw them out there. Maybe just Big Al is probably the one that's the least battle-tested. Learning experience for these guys. This is under their skin so much that Big Ben needs to take time to reflect, pray upon it, and think with his family. But we were not going to stop there. Why not? When you're the media, you need to say that Antonio Brown is complaining about someone scoring on a touchdown. You know what? We were talking the other day about favorite non-Steelers, and one of my guys, I won't mention who it was just to protect the innocent or guilty, favorite non-Steeler. And it came up Colts punter Pat McAfee, who's a regular on NFL Network. Usually Good Morning Football he's on. And Pat tweeted out a photo showing Antonio Brown with his hands up in the touchdown signal pose. Does that look like a guy that's complaining about not getting the rock? I don't believe. Let's put it this way, folks. For the people that are talking about trading Antonio Brown, are you out of your mind? One of, if not the best player, wide receiver in the NFL. They are literally making records so they could put his name next to it because he does things people have never done before. We're all talking about franchise tagging Le'Veon Bell. Whether Le'Veon Bell could stay healthy. Well, he stayed healthy most of the year, with the exception of his playoff game with the groin, and he still grinded it out. Lev Bell has never failed a drug test. Quit calling him a pothead. You want to say that to Martavis Bryant, somebody who's actually failed it and presumably has failed multiple times and was suspended for an entire year, much like Josh Gordon? Viable proof? Call a spade. That's fine. Still love you, Martavis Bryant. I'm looking forward to seeing you this upcoming season make this team a lot better. Take some of that heat off of Antonio Brown. But Antonio Brown, you're not trading Antonio Brown. The GOAT, greatest of all time, owns several franchise records, will hold all of them if he stays with this team, and I don't have any reason to believe he won't. Do you think Kevin Colbert in this front office kicks money ahead 2 seasons in a row to placate Antonio Brown? Because they're not going to rip up and redo his contract just yet, but they value what he's done. They appreciate what he's done, and they're trying to compensate for that and realize he's outplayed his contract. There are many players who have not outplayed their contract. Cortez Allen is a player that we paid a lot of money to, and LaMarr Woodley, who ended up getting hurt but had fantastic seasons leading up to that big money contract, the biggest of any defender up to that time with the Pittsburgh Steelers, breaking the bank. Antonio Brown's going to break the bank too. They're going to pay him. This isn't some guy you just let go. Is he really a problem and really a distraction for what? Facebook supposedly paid him 6 figures to do a live video. The timing of it was awful, but we've seen Mike Tomlin jump in and do these videos with him and other teammates and stuff. It's not unheard of that this guy doesn't live stream from his phone to all of his social media fans. It's a distraction. Is it really a distraction? I don't think it was too much of a distraction. I think a fire alarm going off in a hotel at 3 a.m. is a much bigger distraction than anything Antonio Brown did. Antonio Brown is not getting in fights in nightclubs like Santonio Holmes did, or fail a drug test and get suspended for 4 games like Santonio Holmes did. They traded Santonio Holmes. They have not traded Martavis Bryant. He is still on the roster. And they're going to franchise tag Le'Veon Bell even though he's been in trouble with the league. They had a mishap with this whole testing thing, and they've actually admitted some fault by reducing his penalty from 4 games to 3. He's still on this roster. What is Antonio Brown guilty of? Having too much fun? Celebrating in the end zone? Doing a live stream? He does it with his workouts. He did it in the locker room. Smiling, doing Pepsi commercials. This guy isn't getting in fights with people on the sideline, calling out teammates in press conferences. He's not Terrell Owens. He's not Chad Ochocinco. He's not Michael Irvin, Chris Carter, Randy Moss. He is not the most polarizing player in the NFL, as supposedly Ben Roethlisberger is from that Sports Illustrated hit piece that we talked about. So why? Why do people think that why do you want to fire Mike Tomlin, fire Todd Haley, fire Keith Butler, let Ben retire, and trade away Antonio Brown? Are you all out of your mind? And then, of course, we won't re-sign Le'Veon Bell where we're at it, too. Why don't we just go 0-16 next year, and we could get the top pick in the draft, and you could find out that that doesn't necessarily work out too well when you ask the Los Angeles Rams about Jared Goff. Not to say that he can't have a promising future, but it wasn't a very good first year. Get it, guys that could just step in and play. It doesn't work like that. This is professional football. Much different than college. Not everyone makes it. Not all first-round picks make it. Not all sixth-round picks make it. You got to want it. So, folks, relax. Because I don't see Antonio Brown going anywhere. He's not the headache. He didn't sit out like Mike Wallace or anybody else did. People make up some of these stories. You see what happens when you're a bad teammate. Look at LeGarrette Blount. They held on to Brandon Boykin, but he didn't see any playing time when he was running his mouth here. Runs his mouth somewhere else. Carolina Panthers didn't put up with it either. They didn't even let him get to camp. So, some old names there that I'm bringing up. But, Killer Bees, those guys, they're not going anywhere. Relax, fans. And relax not only about all the panic about Ben retiring, maybe possibly, potentially mentioning something about retirement or Antonio Brown getting traded. And nobody's saying anything like that. I'm trying to say it's feelers. They just don't want Antonio to go down a bad path and get suspended like Bryant or Bell or anyone else. So, with all that said, see that deep breath? Even got me worked up. Imagine what these players feel like. It's like trying to cope a day after a funeral, loss of a loved one or something. Relax. Don't agitate. Support these guys. Don't you want them to do better, even better next year? Oh, it's so frustrating. Hope you feel me, Steelers fans. I'm sure some of you got some things to say, so give a call on the hotline, of course, 203-900, the number 4, the letters SCU, whatever number those are. You can look them up. That's what we have smartphones for. Until next time, be safe, be good, and I'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.